Good morning, guys. Actually it's afternoon, so good afternoon, guys. It is Millie here, and I'm going to come up with another vitamin that we're going to be talking about today. I just want to get straight into it because it is a long one. I'm going to try and keep this as short as possible, but it is talking about vitamin D, which is like one of the most essential vitamins that we really need in our system. So let's get on to it. Okay, so vitamin D is one of the most important vitamins that we need. It is actually called the sunshine vitamin, and everyone knows vitamin D comes from the sun, essentially. So we like to call like the sun as our UV, and we do have two types of UV. We have UVB and UVA. They both do come from the sun, and they do produce, like UVB produces kind of, you can get cancer from UVB technically, and then with UVA it still produces like obviously like cancerous things, but it's more like aging and like melanin and stuff like that. So vitamin D in people kind of ranges depending on your skin type. First of all, if you have darker skin, you are more exposed to absorbing more vitamin UVB rays instead of fairer people who don't tend to absorb as much. So that means that they have to have more sun exposure to absorb the same amount that actual people with darker skin was. And I know that sucks because I know a lot of fairer people have issues with sun burn and everything like that. So yeah, it's kind of a thing where you have to try and figure out how you're going to get enough of it. There are two types of vitamin D and that are made in the skin. So just one thing clearly is that vitamin D does not come from it's not made in the sun. Okay, you have your UVB rays and your UVA rays. Those goes into your skin, and you make the vitamin D in your body. Okay, so there's two forms. There's vitamin D2, which comes from plant sources and everything. It's the most natural form of vitamin D. And you got vitamin D3, which also comes from animal sources, so such as your fatty oily fishes, so salmon and mackerel and herring, which all contain that vitamin D3, which is, you know, obviously super helpful for people who do struggle a little bit with getting enough vitamin D in their bodies. How does vitamin D get into the body, and how does it work? Now this is going to be a little bit sciencey for everyone out there. I'm going to try to do my best. I've got my iPad there just to keep me well on notes because it is quite a complex process. So when you ingest vitamin D in your body through predominantly this sky and the UV rays, they are probably the best way to get vitamin D. It gets ingested into these things called claromicrons. Now these are fat globules which basically absorb fat, and they travel through the lymph system, and they get absorbed they're in the lymphatic system, which is basically this like free running fluid that's like beside your veins and your arteries and stuff like that, that just carries around those excess like fluid substances that like you need to be transported around the body. Okay, you have it everywhere, and basically then it gets absorbed then it goes into the venous blood, so through the venous blood. And then these are basically the substance that is in these products of like vitamin D are basically motionless. They can't move on their own, so they need to be in these claromicrons to actually move effectively. Now it goes to the liver, and this is when it requires its first hydroxylation process. Now what the hell is hydroxylation? Hydroxylation is you're adding an OH, a hydroxyl group. It's very chemistry. A hydroxyl group, which is an OH group, to the molecule. So to that molecule that is that essential vitamin D molecule that is inert and motionless and not really active. You're doing that first hydroxylation. Then that is in the liver. Then it goes down into the kidneys, and it transforms again and it's getting another hydroxylation process by the 25-OHD D1-OHAs. Again, it's a very complex process, so I tried to do it as much as I could, like downgrading it so it doesn't sound as complex, but it's really just, it undergoes 2 hydroxylation processes to form its actual biologically active form of vitamin D. So now, after these 2 hydroxylation processes, it's formed into its vitamin D component. What does this vitamin D essentially do? Now, vitamin D is one of the most important things for calcium absorption. So it really helps with that calcium absorption. So it's so essential for our bones. So our bone growth, the hardening of our bones, because calcium is super important for our bones, okay? If you don't have calcium, you're kind of gonna run into a lot of bone issues. So if you don't have vitamin D, only around 10 to 15% of your dietary calcium and 60% of your phosphorus, which is also so essential for bones, basically gets absorbed, and that is really, really bad because you need a lot of calcium and stuff like that, because calcium is also really essential for a lot of metabolic processes. So, now, what does vitamin D help? Now, there's a lot of things that vitamin D really helps. It helps to suppress your cellular growth sometimes, because you don't want your cells to grow so much that you have an overabundance of cells. So it helps to suppress kind of when it doesn't really need it. There's terminal differentiation in cells, so that's really, really important to differentiate cells so then they can do different processes. It helps to inhibit angiogenesis, which is basically forming new blood vessels from pre-existing vessels. It helps to stimulate insulin production, which is so important because we need insulin to travel with our glucose to the cells in order to give cells glucose for reactions to occur as being ATP. It also inhibits renin production, which basically kind of helps with the increasing blood pressure in the kidneys. So renin's responsible for increasing blood pressure in the kidneys, so it helps to inhibit that sometimes. And it stimulates macrophage production, which is basically those cells, immune cells, which basically go and eat bad and foreign cells and all like disease cells and stuff like that. It's also really important for your bone metabolism, your cell growth metabolism, your neuromuscular and your inflammatory production. So a lot of important. It also really helps with regulating around 2,000 genes, which is a lot of freaking genes, guys. So it also helps with pleiotropic health benefits, where basically pleiotropic genes are where there is multiple effects coming from one single gene. This is an example of the Marion gene, which basically helps you get long fingers, long toes. It also helps the dislocation of the eye lens in a particular way to make it work. And also it's really important with dissecting aneurysms of the aorta, which is super, super important. So it's actually a pretty cool thing, like pleiotropic genes actually. Now, what about all the foods that we can have from vitamin D? Now, again, I say this with very, very big emphasis. Vitamin D is essentially the most important, one of the most important, as you could tell. And it is so important to go into the sun and get your most vitamin D. It is so important to spend about 20 minutes outside every single day to absorb that vitamin D. Essentially, if you are in winter environments where you don't get a lot of vitamin D, taking supplements, taking food alternatives is the best way possible. But if you have a sun outside, I'd say take advantage of it. Spend 20 minutes without any sort of sunscreen, because sunscreen can block the vitamin D from getting absorbed, because again, it's trying to block the amount of UV rays going into your skin. So I essentially say spend 20 minutes outside in the sun, walking, sitting out in the sun. It's great. It's so great for mental boosting properties as well. So that. But it is found in fatty fish, in some dairy and non-dairy products as well. Orange juice, it's also found. Some cereals is really good as well. Having it in beef liver, cheese, egg yolks, cod liver oil, and portobello mushrooms as well. So you can see there's a little bit in everything, but I essentially say try to get it in the sun as the most possible thing. Now we're going on to the last topic, which is vitamin D deficiency. Now this is the most kind of biggest deficiency you can get. And normally what they call, if you have a deficient state, is called hypovitaminosis. Okay, hypovitaminosis. I'm trying to say that. D. So it's basically saying that you have a disease that is deficient in a certain vitamin. So what is vitamin deficiency saying? So it's attributed to a lifestyle, what you're doing with your lifestyle. So if you're not getting enough sun, if you're not taking in the right amount of nutrients that is going to be getting that vitamin D uptake in, you're going to be having a vitamin D deficiency. It's actually been one of the biggest deficiencies in the world, affecting about 50% of the population. It has a really big effect on total mortality in a general population, which is basically, it can lead to death. Unfortunately. It has a lot of metabolic and endocrine abnormalities. Now, metabolic is all your reactions in the body, kind of all that, and then endocrine is all your hormones. So basically they kind of say that vitamin D acts like a hormone because it has receptors, which are these little things outside the cell that basically get notified when it sees certain things on cells in order to absorb certain probably vitamin D. So what can happen is you can get rickets, especially in children, which is basically soft bones, and osteomalacia, which is again soft bones, which can cause brittle bones and osteoporosis. One of the biggest things with vitamin D deficiency is osteoporosis, because you're not having enough vitamin D, you're not absorbing enough calcium and phosphorus, meaning that your bones start to not be hardened because you're not having that calcium to harden those bones and for bone growth and for bone production and all these great amazing things for the bones. So actually adults over 70 years old need 3 times as more vitamin D to keep up with the level of a child. So again, the bigger you get, the older you get, you need more vitamin D technically. So there are a few cases where people can't absorb vitamin D. Again, what I said in the previous video, there's sometimes in cases where people can't just absorb it properly, and these happen with people who have bowel disease, celiac disease, chronic active hepatitis, with or without chronic kidney disease, with or without dialysis, chronic pancreatitis, cystic fibrosis, diabetes, gastric bypass, and primarily biliary cirrhosis, which is basically an autoimmune disease, which basically means that you're basically attacking your own cells. And all these kind of chronic diseases can result in a malabsorption of vitamin D, which is super bad. So you're gonna have to try and take it in its specific form so you can absorb it in a way. So that's also what you need to consider. If you do have any of those chronic diseases, you may need to talk to your doctor or certified medical health professional to work out a way to actually get your vitamin D deficiency underway and away from your body and trying to absorb it efficiently. And again, other kind of symptoms of having deficiency of vitamin D is basically you get a lot more sickness, you're a lot more tired and fatigued, you have a lot more bone and back pain because again you're not having that calcium and phosphorus absorption, a lot more depression, because again you can see that when people are living in the winter months and they don't have a lot of vitamin D, you see a lot more depression going around because it's not releasing certain hormones. Like we said, it has an effect on hormone functions. So and again, when you're in the sun, you get those release of those really happy hormones that we have. So yeah. Impaired wound healing because you're not having enough platelets, or it's just not having enough effect. Bone loss, hair loss, and muscle pain. So there's a lot of different things that can result in when you have a vitamin D deficiency. So get those vitamins in, guys. Make sure you're out in the sun. Make sure you're going, chilling out, even if it's a winter's day and there's the sun out, go and just sit in the sun. If it's snowing or if it's a wintry cold days and everything like that, go and get a vitamin D supplement because that will probably help you the best way. And just taking that vitamin D, y'all. Just getting that vitamin D, and I'm going to finish off. I hope you guys liked this video. Hopefully it wasn't too long, and I hope you guys understood everything. If you want to ask me any sort of questions, just leave in the comments down below and I will answer all. All right guys, bye.